I'm really delighted that Elizabeth Oldfield is coming to speak to us today. Elizabeth has done many things in her career, does many things, so I'm really grateful that she's here this morning. Just come down from Oxford, being with other academics and theologians who are engaged with what God is doing in the world today. And Elizabeth wrote this book, Fully Alive, Tending to the Soul in Turbulent Times. And I first met Elizabeth over a glass of mulled wine at a Christmas party a few years ago, and Elizabeth was telling me all about this book, and I thought, wow, this is extraordinary. It is an amazing book. I would really encourage you to buy it, to read it, whether or not you call yourself a Christian. It's a particularly good book, I think, to give to people, to recommend to people who aren't Christians as well. Elizabeth has an extraordinary role in the world today, and a real gift from God to speak across the divides, speaking to people from all different backgrounds about what is sacred to them, and in so many ways just opening up the beauty and the wonder of who Jesus is to people. So could you please give a very, very warm welcome to Elizabeth. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Hi. Thank you so much for having me. Last year I read a piece, an essay on Substack that someone had sent me, a friend of mine who has no kind of religious or spiritual framework at all, in fact, actively rejects those things. And it was called People Who Demand Nothing of You, or Notes on Charismatic People. And I'm just going to read you a chunk of it to frame our talk this morning. It's someone trying to think through what charisma is and how it feels. The most likable, charismatic, enjoyable people to be around are people who demand nothing of you. And at first I had written, ask nothing of you, but that didn't feel quite right. It felt too detached, like they wanted nothing from others, like they never invited you to things or asked you for commitment. And that isn't true of the people I'm thinking of. The most charismatic people I know, who seem to have this radiant, magnetic quality to their presence, are actually those who actively invite you to things, but are totally okay with you declining. And they really mean it. After all, who is more selfless than someone who appears to be complete? And despite this, they are being fully mentally and emotionally present with you, making you feel seen and loved and worthy. Interacting with highly charismatic people gives you a high because of the intensity of being seen. And it's rare to encounter people who can really see you, because most people have got too much going on in their heads. The difference is in whether they encounter you as an equal or as a means to some other end. And this part never lies. See how they leave you feeling over time. Are they holding love hostage when you don't act in accordance with what they want? Or do they approach your presence with gratitude, but don't demand you stay forever? With truly charismatic people, there is no hint of scarcity. They live in the realm of what is possible and abundant. They are not afraid of what happens, because no matter what happens, they know it will fundamentally be okay. And they don't leave these sticky traces on you after they're gone. Those traces when people lightly guilt you or are passive aggressive to you or pedestalize you. People who essentially look too much up at you or look too much down at you. To be a truly charismatic person, the piece ends. You have to actually like people and be present. You have to set down whatever stands between you and vibrant, pulsing reality. Well, for whatever reason, this post became a kind of mental earworm to me. Its vivid description of the experience of being with someone truly charismatic kind of provoked in me this painfully sweet longing to be that kind of person. Because I knew exactly what she was talking about and how rare it is. And I was also reading it through the frame of having a different context for the word charismatic, right? A theological context for the word charismatic. And I could see suddenly how Christians like me should, in theory, be amongst the most benevolently charismatic people in the world. People who know themselves complete, treat other people as equal, are emotionally present, have no hint of scarcity. If the claims of my faith are true and I am truly living into them, I actually don't need other people to fill some hole in me, because I am already enough. I can live in a posture of that enoughness, which is the opposite of scarcity, with wide open arms of hospitality. I can invite people in and be delighted when they come and just hold it super lightly when they don't. And even more radically, I can. This is the claim of the Christian faith. I'm not saying I know how to live this. Be someone who is fundamentally unafraid. Sorry. Who trusts not that everything will be okay. Unfortunately, that is not the promise. But that love is stronger than death. And so everything will be okay in the end. Can you imagine what it would be like if this spirit is what characterized our churches? How swiftly they would fill, how magnetic our presence would be. And when I read about the early church in the days following Pentecost, this is how I imagine them. Like, yes, grumpy and tired, and like, someone's forgot their cloak, and someone's annoyed they have to go get it, but steady. At home in their own skin because of what they had seen. No longer those people who had niggled at Jesus about who would sit next to him in heaven, because they knew that those status games no longer mattered. Today is Pentecost. It is the origin story of the whole church. And for those of you who are maybe in church for the first time, or you're not so familiar with this story, it is a day after Jesus has died and been resurrected and then ascended into heaven, all of which is pretty weird. We don't have time to unpack right now, but key beats in the story. And then his disciples gather and they're a bit like, what is going on? And they have this experience, this bodily experience of something shifting deeply within them. And the story says they have tongues of fire on their head and they can speak in languages that connect with everyone in the city. I know you've been teaching and talking about the Holy Spirit in church lately, and I have long been interested in what this relationship between the theological word charismatic and its more popular usage that we started with. And today I'm going to major on an idea from the piece I read that really charismatic people in both senses have a different spirit, have a different presence in the world, or can. Because they don't demand anything of others. They are interested in them and curious about them, but not in a way that is trying to stabilize an unstable sense of self. And they are able to engage with other people, neither looking up at them from a place of insecurity or inferiority, or down at them from the opposite, but eye to eye, as equals. And you get hints of it in a passage from Acts, which is the book that tells the story of Pentecost. And it talks about the Spirit being poured out on everyone. This is an inclusive, equalizing, democratizing gift. This is no longer that something happens in like the private inner sanctum of the temple where a small cadre of elite chosen people can encounter the Spirit of God directly. It's like, boom, the walls are down. This thing is spilling out. The hierarchies are completely destroyed. And that gift, and the early church was trying to figure out what on earth to do with it, bulldozed through pre-existing distinctions of status. I'm fascinated by this part of my tradition. What might it mean to really live it? Because I don't know about you, but most of the time I live in a world where status is incredibly relevant. Our society, perhaps all societies, function on unspoken rankings of human value, on hierarchies of achievements and attributes. And without a transcendent frame for human value, without a religiously or at least philosophically rooted commitment to equality, honestly, inequality seems pretty obvious, right? It is something we drift into in our thinking if we don't have a really strong anchor to hold us away from it. is why I think we are so strivey. We are obsessed with self-improvement and progress and goals and proving ourselves, and though we rarely say the quiet part aloud, it's at least partly because it feels good to be better than other people, right? Tell me that's not just me. No one wants to be left behind. No one wants to be overlooked in the race of life. Everyone is in search of a gaze. And in the earliest moments of a human life, a baby is looking for one thing: 2 eyes turned towards it. Andy Crouch puts it that recognition is the first human quest. Being seen is what we are made for. And much as we might like to think that we define ourselves and love ourselves and create ourselves, from our very first moments, we are inescapably social creatures looking outside of ourselves for someone else to tell us our value. And that's good, because it should drive us into healthy relationships. But it's also our Achilles heel. Because when our need for deep, unconditional attention and affirmation goes unmet, as it almost always will, no matter how good the parenting we received, and let's be honest, everyone receives imperfect parenting, we look to wider society to sate that hunger in us. And the world is not always kind. The world does not always meet us in that need. And so we end up living our lives in this slightly queasy, anxious search for recognition and attention. And it plays out in these status games, and primarily comparative and competitive status games. And it's weird that we don't talk about it more, right? It's just like an unseen fact of our lives. It will have been happening this morning. I'm going to make you all a bit bum clenchy now, but if you, in fact, don't meet anyone's eyes, don't look around, but if you did, I reckon you would have some mental associations with people's status. You might make some guesses, right, about who is a high status person in their particular community or this community or wherever they are in the world. It is so instinctive in us. We are like dogs sniffing each other's bottoms to figure out where we sit in the pack. That's what all those questions are when you first meet someone. Hi, what do you do? And where do you live? And how do I triangulate my relationship with you? And who is sitting on the top? I know it's embarrassing, and this isn't conscious, right? But I hope that you recognize that some of these dynamics are at play in many of our human relationships. We're never taught about it at school, we just know it. Teenagers particularly know it. And it will depend what group you're in, what the status signifiers are, right? Money in almost all groupings carries high status, but not all. Sometimes it's a liability in the status games, like there's rooms where you downplay how much you have and rooms where you upplay how much you have, right? Like job titles, house sizes, hotness, all of these things, thinness, abs, smooth skin, it's all in the mix. But depending on where you want to find your identity and belonging, those signifiers might be slightly different, right? So I've just got back from Oxford, an academic conference, and it's hilarious in Oxford. It's none of those things. In Oxford, it's just like who can quote the most obscure book, and who can be like bitterly scathing about someone else's scholarship, right? I can deliver a just crushing blow to someone's whole career with my one line and then stand back and wait for the applause. And in other group, everyone will be like, mate, what are you doing? In this church, it might be the person who actively is seen as being the most prayerful, right? Or who can quote the Bible the best, or you will know in your community who just naturally, unconsciously, without us really realizing, accrues status around them. And philosopher Charles Taylor says it shows in our very deportment. The way we walk, move, gesture, and speak is shaped from our earliest moments by our awareness that we appear before others, that we stand in public space, and that this space is potentially one of respect or contempt, pride or shame. And one of the things that I'm doing when I'm speaking to you is trying to signal my status, because otherwise why would you listen to me, right? I thought about my outfit today. I thought, what should I wear so that people will think, well, she seems like someone worth listening to. For some of you, I will have got it really wrong. And for some of you, I will have got it really right. And that's fine. I quote people like Charles Taylor, the philosopher, who I have read that quote and 4 other quotes from. Because I think it makes me sound smart. And if you think I sound smart, then you're more likely to listen to me. Right? We are all doing this all the time, signaling that we are worthy, signaling that people should take us seriously. Abraham Tasso, who's a psychologist, calls it the self-evaluation maintenance model. And it's basically, in any human interaction, quite far below the level of our consciousness, we are driven to maintain our own sense of worth. And we need this. I think the embarrassing truth of the human heart is we all need this. We want to know we are of worth, we want to know we are valued, and we spend a lot of time trying to get that need met through other people. And I don't know if you remember that piece about a charismatic person. Is someone who doesn't need anything from you, but just wants you around anyway. I think there is something about a stable sense of self which can and sometimes does allow what Tim Keller called the freedom of self-forgetfulness. The freedom to be present in the world, at home in our own skin, knowing our own worth, knowing our belovedness, knowing our value, and then being able to forget about it and work out how to bless and love and listen to the other person in front of us. This is the opposite of networking parties. Have you been to a networking party? It's like the definition of like the status Olympics. I find it hilarious to watch people doing this. They're like, are you worth my time? Are you worth my time? Who's coming? So much of our working lives and our social lives and our online lives are not about meeting each other eye to eye, equal to equal in the freedom of self-forgetfulness, but this seeking for status and a stable sense of self. And I'm increasingly convinced that whether we are winners or losers in the status game, and if you live long enough, you will be both. Like, if you are high status now, that is not a guarantee. By the time you are old and frail and no longer impressive, believe me, things will shift. If you are low status now, and you'll be different in different groups, right? These things change, they pass, they are both forms of soul danger. Being high status and letting that define us, being low status and letting that define us are both forms of soul danger. And it's partly because we are made for relationship, and status differentials make it really hard to connect. They make it really hard to see each other, to meet each other as people made in the image of God. Neither looking up at them in cringing deference or down at them with superiority, but eye to eye. But it is the beginning of all real friendship, all real fellowship, all real community, all real intimacy, all real aliveness, all real humanity. And it's incredibly difficult. And the Bible is full of help with it. In Luke 14, Jesus tells this parable of the banquet, where people show up at a party and put themselves high up at the table, which was the place of honor near to the host. It turns out this is not new. 2,000 years ago, people were still wondering where they stood, where they sat in the pack of dogs, who was at the top. And Jesus says, do not strive for status. Do not strive for honor. Do not put yourself at the top of the table. Don't crave the approval of others. Crave my approval, which I give you freely. Will you trust what I say about you, Jesus asks? Will you let me honor you? So I honestly believe that the Christian tradition and the wisdom of the New Testament can help us navigate a status-obsessed world with some freedom, with some playfulness, with a posture that can help us offer that freedom and playfulness to others. And I heard an echo with it in that piece about being a truly charismatic person. Not being someone charming or slick or manipulative or good at getting other people to do what we want, but to be people who are so comfortable in our own skin, so able to look on others eye to eye with curiosity and openness and hospitality, not needing them to stabilize our sense of self, but wanting them. Knowing that God does not need us, but wants us. And this is a lifetime's work of discipleship. If you're new in church, that just means the process of trying to follow Jesus and become more like him. We don't start with any of this. Even when we have said, okay, God, I believe that you know and love me. I believe you want to forgive me. I want to follow you. That's just the start. And I am trying now to put this more centrally in the practice of my faith. To refuse to get caught up in the status dynamics, but to claim my stability that is already given and that I have not earned. To get it into my bones and to my blood, to marinate in that claim, to declare it and sing it and weave it as a sort of protective spell against the wider status story of the world. Because honestly, Christianity calls bull on all this nonsense. It is an audacious rejection of status hierarchies in a way that upended the ancient world. Its central story is of a figure who met everyone from the lowest outcast to kings and rulers and looked them in the eye, even when it caused massive scandal. And the early church was radically egalitarian, made up of people the wider culture despised and those they cringed in deference to, and then they had to figure out how to live together and love each other. And the New Testament is full of these letters between these communities, and it's difficult, right? Like, stop not giving food to that gang. Like, I know you hated them your whole life, but they're part of you now, so sort it out. Like, Beryl and Dave, come on now. Like, I know you think you don't have to get on, but you have to get on. I love how psychologically realistic the New Testament is. It's this giant, world-shifting claim of human equality embodied in human bodies that don't know how to do that and are just figuring it out. But even as they did so imperfectly, they offered us a gift that we can receive. The possibility that when we are invited by the Holy Spirit into a different community that was unlike anything the world had ever seen, slaves could sit with senators and know themselves to be siblings. And the story logic of Christianity paints humans as made to be in communion and not competition with each other. It makes it possible some days for me to believe myself to be seen and known and gazed upon lovingly, and it claims that I am complete already, that my self-evaluation is already secure and declared by an entirely just and kind, entirely objective, external arbiter who, through no merit of my own, just wants me around. My faith has helped me become more aware of, and sometimes even able to extricate myself from status anxiety and status games. An atheist philosopher, Alain de Botton, acknowledges that this is possible. He's written a book called Status Anxiety, which I would strongly recommend. And at the end of that book, he really unpacks this reality of human life. And then he says, what can we do? And he offers some prescriptions. And one of them is the arts, because the arts is always telling a story of the underdog. And I can't remember what the other one is. And the third one is Christianity, even though he's an atheist. He says one of the unique offers of the Christian faith is it calls bull on status games. It says they are nonsense and offers us a way to extricate ourselves from them. It claims that status games are empty and pointless shadow posturing that it is possible to free ourselves from. When Dash in The Incredibles, I don't know if any of you have seen this highbrow masterpiece, when Dash in The Incredibles, Pixar animation, is told by his mother, "Everyone is special, Dash," and he replies, which is another way of saying no one is, he's saying something profound. because we have been taught to value ourselves almost entirely in comparison. And the idea that all human beings are made in the image of God, invited into equality with each other in the love of God, says it is possible to be entirely loved, secure and beloved, and entirely unremarkable in being so. And sometimes my ego resists that, because honestly I do want to be special, as in better than. When I notice that in myself, that unlovely instinct, and let it go, there is this enormous well of relief underneath it. Rowan Williams says that knowing yourself loved by God can be a way out of the fearful and cautious negotiation of my identity, because God alone is beyond the precarious exchanges of creatures who need affirmation. With God alone, I am dealing with what does not need to construct or negotiate an identity, what is free to be itself without the process of struggle. And there's a famous verse that you may know from the Sermon on the Mount, "Blessed are the meek." And there is a translation called the Message translation that translates that verse like this: "You're blessed when you're content with just who you are. No more, no less. That's the moment you find yourselves proud owners of everything that can't be bought." Charisma means gift or grace. Truly charismatic people are able to be a gift to others because they know what they themselves have received. They know that they have earned nothing and have nothing to prove. Most days I don't know that, but I want to. I would love this church, or the church as a whole, to be trying to know that. You can hear the Apostle Paul in the middle of this transition in the New Testament, inviting us into it, calling us into it. I don't know if you know anything about Paul, but he was a very high-status Pharisee, which are kind of fancy religious leaders. And he starts by saying, "If anyone else thinks they have confidence to put in the flesh, I have more. Circumcision, the 8th day of the people of Israel, of the tribe of Benjamin, of Hebrews in regard to the law of Pharisee, as for zeal, persecuting the church, as for righteousness based on the law, faultless." And let me translate that for you. That is a long list of LinkedIn status updates. That is societal show and tell. It is, you've got 8 degrees, I have 9. Like, you run a triathlon, I ran an Ironman. You earn this much, I earn that much. Like, you know, whatever in your world are the scout badges, the adorably ridiculous scout badges that we accumulate as human beings to make us feel lovable. Paul has the longest list. He's like, look at my list. Look how important I am. He has been at the top of the status tree his whole life. And then he says, "But whatever were gains to me, all this ridiculous list, I now consider rubbish for the sake of Christ. I consider everything a loss because of the surpassing worth, his worth, of knowing Christ Jesus my Lord, for whose sake I have lost all things. I consider that list rubbish, that I may gain Christ and be found in him, not having a righteousness, or you could think of status of my own, that comes from the law, which I have earned, but that which is through faith in Christ. Righteousness, a status, a belovedness, that comes from God as a gift on the basis of faith." You already have everything you need, friends. You are already enough. Your identity is secure because of the gift of grace. And if you don't already know that, if you don't already know you're loved by God, if you have not already had that encounter with Jesus who offers it to us, you can. And we'd love to talk to you about it. It's for you too. I'm trying to live towards a God who never needed me, but wanted me, who welcomes me and delights in my presence. And I'm trying to know that deeply enough that I can practice haltingly loving others that way, as it invites us in 1 John 4. I've been loved freely and my identity is secure, so I can love others freely and be not trying to get anything from them, but offering the gifts that I have to give. And I'll just end by saying, I don't want you to go away thinking that you need to strive to change into someone you are not. Apparently, extroversion is not a spiritual gift, unfortunately. And I don't think you need to go, oh, I can't be a truly charismatic person. I can't be a gift to the world because I am intimidated by people and I do feel insecure. Or actually, sometimes I have the temptation to be arrogant and to look down on people because of what I've achieved in my life. None of this comes naturally. All of it is a process. And it's really deep and tender stuff that we may well need some help with. We probably all did not receive, because parents are humans, the unconditional loving gaze that we might have wanted in our childhood. And we may also have had reasons as we've gone about in society for other people to impose inferiority on us, right? I've just got back from a conference on Christian humanism and black theology, and there's a guy called James Pennington who was good friends with the early black abolitionists. And he was an enslaved person who ran away, and he became a minister. And he says it took him 2 years to cast off the shackles and 4 years to stop cowering and come to believe himself fully equal in the love of God. 4 years sounds short to me, actually. This is the life's work to try and get ourselves in a radically different logic about human value. And we might need some help. We would love to be praying for you. There is a prayer team. I'm really happy to pray with anyone who wants to. It feels incredibly deep and tender, and it may well be that some of us need more than just prayer in church. We might need some more therapeutic support or some counseling or some pastoral input, and I know that the church would love to talk to you about some pathways to that. I'm just going to end by saying, we can bring our anxiety, our status anxiety and our arrogance. We can bring how we have been formed by status games and ask to be liberated. Ask to be reoriented towards grace, to receive the gift, the charism of our unconditional belovedness, and write and overwrite that promise into our hearts, minds, soul, and spirits through the course of our whole life, by training our attention again and again on the extraordinary source of stability and healing, safety and unconditional love that I find in Jesus Christ. And if we can do that, we will not be able to help becoming, over time, slowly and painfully and falteringly, in our own particular, sometimes quiet way, more truly, beautifully charismatic people.